Hey everyone, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to episode 3 of my sampler instrument design series. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to adding loops to your sampler instruments, and we'll get a little deeper into modulation techniques, especially with the filters, pitch, creating vibrato, and using the modulation wheel. So for this instrument, I rented a clarinet, and bear with me, I can only play clarinet at about a 5th grade level. And what I want to do is create sort of a spacey clarinet pad type instrument that can also be used for melodic ideas and soundscapes. We're still going to use the optimized map, but we're going to work with loops in sampler because these are sustained notes, not decaying notes like the last 2 episodes. And just like the last episode, I'm going to supply the clarinet samples to you if you want to follow along and build your own instrument. Okay, so here are the clarinet samples. I basically have 1 octave of a major scale, and then there's like a break in the register that I couldn't get right, and then I played a few more notes above that. But it's not really so important that these are beautiful clarinet samples. It's more that the sound source has the tone of a clarinet, so then our end result will sort of embody the tone of a clarinet. Okay, yeah, the top one's not too nice sounding, but let's go ahead and just drag and drop these into the track header area. Once again, we're going to use sampler optimized map. And while those are loading in, I'm going to take a quick break and tell you about the long-term sponsor of the channel, Boombox. If you're a musician or producer looking for an all-in-one platform, this is it. Boombox combines secure file storage, collaboration tools, and networking opportunities into one seamless experience. With Boombox, you can securely store everything from single tracks to full DAW sessions and invite collaborators to leave time-stamped feedback on your projects. You can even set up personalized inboxes for clients to upload their files directly to you. If you need to manage your projects on the go, you can download the Boombox mobile app for iOS or Android. And if you need to upload large files directly from your desktop, you can use the Sync app for macOS. Connect with other artists through a customizable artist profile, explore collaboration opportunities, and create playlists to share your favorite tracks. Kickstart your creative workflow by visiting boombox.io and sign up today to claim your 4 gigabytes of free storage, or upgrade to one of their paid plans if you need more storage space and additional pro features. Okay, so just like in previous videos, the optimized map will automatically map these samples to the correct pitch and adjust their fine tuning to make sure that they are actually in tune. Yeah, so it's a little honky sounding right now, but well, we'll play around with that in a bit. So first, let's go to our zone list here, and let's just go up to our very first sample. And what I want to do is create a loop range for this sample so it plays indefinitely. No matter how long you hold the keys down, the sample will continue to loop itself indefinitely. So you can add loops by going to the loop column. And if you don't see the loop column, you can go up to View, Visible Zone List Columns, and make sure that loop is shown. I'm going to hit Command A, and I'm going to turn on all of these loops. Then I'm going to go back and just select the first sample, and I'm going to create a sample loop range here. And you can also adjust the crossfade of that loop. So let's try something like that. There's a little bit of a pop at the beginning of the sample. That's probably not going to be a big deal, but let's go ahead and add a slight fade just to the beginning of the sample. Okay, so now that I have that setting in just this one sample. Let's go ahead and add this setting to all of the other samples. So the loop in, the loop out, the crossfade, and then the fade at the beginning. So under the loop column here, you'll see your loop start point. I can copy this, just double click and then hit Command C, hit Command A to select all, double click on the next one down, Command V to paste, and then hit return. I can copy the end point of the loop, do the same thing for the other samples. I can copy the crossfade value, double click and paste that in for the other samples. And now I have the exact same loop range for all of my samples. Now, one thing I do like to do sometimes is I like to kind of randomize my start and end points for these, just so they're not all exactly the same. Sometimes when you have samples that loop all at the same time, it's like really noticeable. So this just sort of offsets where the loop will be. And so I'm just going to kind of click, quickly drag up and down on each of these values just to randomize them a bit, just like so. And then we need to add a fade in to the front end. And so the way you can add a fade is we're going to go up to View, go to Visible Zone List Columns, and we want to look at the Sample column. So here's the Sample column. It shows your start and end point, but it also gives you an option for a fade in. So I'm going to copy that, hit Command A to select the rest, and paste that into all the other samples. Okay, so it doesn't matter which sample I play or how long I hold the notes out, they're going to loop indefinitely. Now, we are clipping pretty badly, so I'm going to go up to the synth parameter and pull back the volume quite a bit. Let's play around with some of the synthesis and modulation parameters. Whereas in the previous video, we made something that was more plucky and pointed sounding, here we want something that's very soft and has a slow attack and a slow release. So I'm going to pull out the release time a bit, maybe around the 1 second mark. And then I'm going to pull out the attack time a bit as well, just to soften the front end. Maybe I'll pull the release time in just a touch. Maybe pull out the attack a little bit more. So I've got sort of like a clarinet pad right now. And before I start messing with the modulation effects, I'm actually going to add reverb because I like to hear how these filters sound through the reverb. So I'm going to load up another third-party reverb. This is Valhalla Shimmer. This is one of my all-time favorite reverbs, especially for this type of thing where I want really ambient tones. Yeah, and with the reverb there, you can't even really hear the loop points anymore. Let's play around with the filters and let's apply some modulation to the filters. Let's go ahead and turn on filter 1. I'll put this on a 6 dB low pass. Let's maybe pull this down to kind of like the 1/3 point-ish. Maybe just a little bit of resonance, a little bit of drive. I'm going to go ahead and turn off these first 2 modulation routers for now. Now we're going to control this cutoff frequency with the modulation wheel. So this is like the starting point. That's like the lowest point where I want it to be. So on modulation router 1, I'm going to set the source to maximum. I'm going to set the target to filter 1 cutoff. I'm going to pull up the amount of the modulation to 100%, and I'm going to set the secondary via parameter to the modulation wheel. So now the modulation wheel is going to control how much of this filter we hear. I made one mistake though, right here. When you choose a via parameter, it splits the amount into a dual position. So you have your maximum position and then your minimum position. And you can double click on these to reset them. So I really only need that about there to get to the top of the cutoff. I'm going to go ahead and add an EQ before the reverb as well. I'll just add channel EQ. I really think I just want to cut out some of the bottom end. The mid-range, like I said, is a little honky, so I'm going to kind of take that down. But then I want to hear a little bit more of the top end, a little bit more of the air. Okay, I think that'll work. Now, so far, we've only been using maximum as the source. That basically means that there's no source modulator like an envelope or an LFO. So let's go ahead and use LFO 1. So I'm going to bring LFO 1 in. We're going to make this control the filter resonance of filter 1. So I'll choose filter 1 resonance. I don't want this to be controlled by anything. And then I'll just pull this up just a little bit, not a whole lot. And then if we go down to LFO 1, we'll see that this is a triangle wave moving at 4.8 hertz, so 4.8 times per second. So if you don't know what an LFO is, it's a low frequency oscillator, and it can be used as a modulation source to control other parameters. For example, I'm going to pull this way up, just like this, so you can see like an extreme example. If I play a note, you're going to see the resonance value move up and down 4.8 times per second. And there are different shapes you can choose here too. There's sine wave, triangle is what I just used, sawtooth wave. And so that controls the motion of the modulation. I'm going to use the random smooth option, and I'm going to pull this up quite a bit, maybe like 13-ish hertz. And that's just going to make the resonance knob sort of randomize its position. Now, I don't want that much modulation, so I'm going to pull down the modulation amount just to a little bit and pull the resonance down. This is just about creating a little bit of variation, a little bit of randomization, and we're going to do this again with another parameter in just a bit. Okay, so we have direct control over the cutoff with the modulation wheel. Let's randomize the position of the filter 1 cutoff as well. Let's use a different LFO for this. So let's go LFO 2. If you create a new source here, modulation source, it'll automatically pop up down here, or you can click here to add a new envelope or LFO. So for LFO 2, let's make this random as well. And let's make this maybe a little faster, but slower than LFO 1. I don't want them moving at the same rate. Again, we want that sort of random variation in there. And for LFO 2, let's make this control filter cutoff, and let's just pull this up a little bit. And actually, you know what? Let's go in the negative. And this will not be controlled by the modulation wheel either. All this means is that we're going to randomize the filter cutoff by roughly 11% in the downward position. And maybe negative 11 is a bit too much. Let's pull that back. Let's actually make this go a little bit faster. And I find it creates a little bit of texture as well. This one we're going to use to create a classic vibrato effect. Let's use LFO 3 for this. Typically with vibratos, you're going to use a rate somewhere between like 4 to 6 hertz, and you're typically going to use a triangle wave or a sine wave. So the stock setting works just fine for this. And for the target, we're going to affect the pitch. And so you can pull up how much pitch variation you want. Let's just do an extreme example so you can see it. And you'll see the tune option here randomized. Now, I don't want my vibrato up at 94 cents, so I'll pull this back a bit. You want it to be a little bit more natural, a little more subdued, but I do want the modulation wheel to control the vibrato effect. So I'll go ahead and select modulation wheel here. This is going to give us a 2-position slider, and then I can set a top and bottom range for that vibrato. So with modulation wheel all the way down, no vibrato. As I pull up the modulation wheel, you'll get more vibrato. Now, if one filter wasn't good enough, you can actually add in a second filter, and there are two ways to affect the signal flow of the filters. This button here means parallel, so it means that the signal is going to go through filter 1, then it's going to go through filter 2. This is parallel. And what this means is it's going to split the signal in half. Half of it's going to filter 1, half is going to filter 2, and then you can adjust that blend here. So if you want more of filter 1, you pull it over to the left, more of filter 2, you can pull it over to the right. I find that blended filters like this, parallel filters, are much more subtle, and they help to kind of smooth out the tone a bit, especially when you use two different types of filters. So for example, I'm going to use a high pass filter, and then I'm going to pull this down maybe like there. So this is going to cut a lot of the low end in this filter, while this one's cutting the high end. And then we'll add maybe just a little bit of resonance and a little bit of drive. Let's see what that sounds like. So all the way to the left, again, just filter 1. All the way to the right, just filter 2. And then you can blend these together whatever way you want. Okay, so I think I've got the tone kind of nailed here. I'm going to pull the volume down just a touch more. It's getting a little loud. And I'll save this as Space Clarinet or something along those lines. And then the rest of the work can just be done with effects out here. In fact, I think the only thing I really want to add out here is maybe a delay. Let's use the tape delay this time. Tape delay is just a single channel of delay. Let's make this kind of a long delay, like a dotted half note. Filter out the delays. I like to use the diffuse mode and spread it out a little bit. Yeah, let's see what that sounds like. And once again, I can save this preset here in the library if I want to recall it for later. So I'll go ahead and save a preset for that. And off screen, I'll put together a musical example so you can hear the instrument in context. Okay, so off screen, I came up with a really basic musical arrangement, sort of like a lo-fi, spacey theme. There's sort of like a vocal effect and then a lo-fi drum beat. I added in the session bass player just to keep a bass line. And then I've got the space clarinet playing chords, and I have a separate space clarinet track playing a melody. And on the melody, I added the Chroma Glow plugin with the modern tube just to sort of saturate, but also warm the melody a little bit. And one thing you'll see, all these little gray lines on these regions, this is all modulation wheel data. So all you have to do when you create modulation wheel modulation in Sampler, you can record your notes plus the modulation wheel at the same time, or you can record your notes and then take another pass. All you have to do is set the playhead before your existing recording, hit R to record, and then move the modulation wheel. And by default, Logic will merge that modulation wheel data into the MIDI region. So let's give this a listen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.